Alpha.
Good day everyone. Today we are excited and privileged to bring you the official South African launch of two of our latest groundbreaking products. The long-awaited and very welcomed Sony A7S III and of course the brand new incredibly stylish Sony A7C. Sony continues to exceed our expectations and prove over and over again they care and listen to the consumers with their innovative technology and adaptability around the products that they deliver to the end user. With the A7S III that features the brand new fully operational touch flip out and rotating screen, the record button where it is much more user-friendly, and a brand new menu system. The A7S III also features brand new groundbreaking technology and features such as the 4K 60 and 120 frames per second, inherited Venice color science from the FX9 cinema line, 10-bit 422 color depth, and a whopping 15 stops of dynamic range. A true masterpiece that hit the entire film industry with a bang, and a tool in the hands of the professionals that brings imagination to life. Just 2 days ago, Sony also surprised us with an all-new Sony A7C model, a compact, stylish, lightweight camera with the power and benefit of a full frame. Also equipped with a brand new flip-out screen, a beautiful silver finish, stamina of the incredible Z battery, and of course a powerful full-frame sensor in an APS-C size body. And not even stopping there, Sony shows us even further commitment by expanding the already big one mount across all APS-C and full-frame lens lineup. With the brand new 20mm f1.8 and the amazing 12 to 24 f2.8 G Master. Needless to say, we are all really excited to be alive in such an amazing time and are really proud and honored to bring you this launch. Without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our Sony Alpha ambassadors. They will run through the presentations and demonstrations with the A7S III and the A7C. To make it even better, we will be having a live panel discussion with Q&A at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our ambassadors. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Tony Coleman.
I'm Luke Bell.
And together we are XCIV.
What's up everyone, my name is Joel Crawford and I make videos for a living.
Hey, I'm Ofenza Mwase. I'm a cinematographer and DOP in the film industry.
Hi, I'm Ian Evenezer. I shoot weddings and commercial.
We specialize in small-scale content and commercials in South Africa and around the world.
I specialize in tourism, travel and adventure film.
And I'm a Sony
Alpha ambassador.
And we are Sony Alpha ambassadors.
Alpha.
I think when the specs for the A7S III were released, everyone was kind of blown away and shocked. And we were all like, okay, but like, what's the catch here? This is too good to be true.
The A7S III is truly in a class of its own.
I actually don't even know how they did it. I think it's like processing voodoo or something in there.
The things that excite me about this camera is the spaces and the shoots that people will attempt that we were never able to attempt before.
That's why I believe it's my favorite camera that I've ever used to date.
And I can't wait to start working with this cinema-level mirrorless camera in weddings and other productions.
Dynamic range has always been one of the main things I look for in a camera. Back in 2014, when I got the A7S, apart from the low-light performance, the superior dynamic range was my motivation for moving over to Sony.
The dynamic range on the camera is pretty incredible. The camera has 15 stops of dynamic range, and you can see there's these shots that I took where literally the artists were backlit by the sun. You can literally see the sun in the shot, and it's not like super blown out. And then I'm still getting enough information on their faces as well on the same shot.
I think it's groundbreaking for a tiny body to have such an excellent range, usually only found in higher-end cinema cameras. Here's a few examples of where the dynamic range really shines. This clip is shot in full sun, and because it's a wide shot, it's not possible to diffuse the overall scene, but the camera handles the highlights really well. Another example is this high contrast scene, where it's difficult to expose for shadows or highlights.
I can see the highlights, which is literally like the sun. I don't think there's anything hotter than that. And then I can still see the shadow areas of the characters that I'm shooting. So I think the fact that you get that feature mixed coupled with the Venice color signs, I don't see any other picture that you'd want to be taking, to be honest.
Because we were shooting at quite a high tempo, moving from space to space to space, the IBIS and the active steady shot allowed us to emulate that tripod stillness, right? The security of a still, refined shot while shooting at handheld, meaning that we could go from one spot with one group of people and immediately move down the road or to a different space and shoot another matching shot without having to set up and place those markings, because the camera's handheld performance allowed us to emulate what it would be like to have the camera on a tripod.
I love to shoot handheld, but handheld has its limitations. There are definitely times that you need something like a gimbal to pull off specific shots. I actually hate shooting with a gimbal. It makes me feel constrained, and especially if time is limited, I find it much easier just to remove the camera from the gimbal and just get the shot handheld. So I was very excited to test out the active mode in situations where previously I would have had to revert to a gimbal. The results were that I could get usable shots while shooting handheld that was previously not possible. Here you can see the model walking down some steps, and 90% of the shot is usable without even post-stabilization.
A7S III makes the jump from 8-bit to 10-bit. With higher bit rates, there's so much more information in the files that the freedom to color correct your footage has been dramatically improved. For example, fixing your white balance, tint and exposure. Now you're able to bring down the highlights and push the shadows even further without introducing artifacts. In this example, although I underexposed the image, the 10-bit codec allows me to bump up the exposure way more than what's possible with 8-bit. The compression size versus efficiency ratio is what sets the Sony apart. Although current competitors offer high bit rates, the file sizes are impractical, where the A7S III has smaller file sizes but more flexibility and performance. Having a better pixel to color ratio means it's easier to isolate a specific color without getting that dreaded halo effect or artifacts when keying or qualifying. In this example, I masked the area that I wanted to qualify and focused only on the overexposed area of the mountain, as this was already late morning with harsh light hitting the peaks, yet the valley was still in full shade. I was able to bring down the highlights and add saturation to make it feel more natural.
In the past, it's been a bit tricky because you need to get your settings right in the beginning, and you can't really make a mistake with your white balance as much and your exposure. But the 422 10-bit combined with the 15 plus stops of dynamic range means that you can fix almost anything in post. And we're getting more to that level of cinema camera where you can adjust everything.
Another feature that I used on the camera is the 100 frame slow-mo in 4K. Like, we've been asking for a camera that can shoot 4K at 100 frames on a mirrorless body for, I think, about 4 to 5 years now. And Sony finally came through with this one.
Talking about balancing shooting modes, one of the shots that we attempted, one of the scenes that was quite complex, is we have our character running across the frame, but they're not only running across the frame, they're running through multiple different spaces. Now, in the past, because you're essentially doing match cuts of lining up each frame, you can never plan for that perfectly, right? Most of the fine adjustment of that is done in post. And you've had to make a decision, or at least we've had to make a decision. Do I get extra resolution so that I can shift the frame around and still maintain a high quality final export? Or do I want to get higher frame rates, right? And the blessing that this camera gave us is that we didn't have to make that choice. We were able to shoot and ensure that the character was perfectly matched up, moving from space to space to space.
I just love the way it still autofocuses when you're shooting at 100 frames. You can literally see the focus go from one object that's in the foreground and then maybe you're seeing something in the back, and it smoothly just transitions in between those two focus points. Like, it's so mind-blowing at how it handles that so well, and everything stays sharp. And I think we've been looking for a camera that can do this for a long time, and then the fact that we have it in such a small body that you can carry around for whatever project that you're working on makes your job so much easier.
It's not worth the risk to have a shot ruined by unreliable autofocus. With the real-time IAF, however, I found the autofocus to be spot on and reliable every time. And for the first time, I can say with confidence that pro users who weren't convinced about autofocus before will definitely consider using it now. This works great even in low light, and I tested it in situations where the scene was underexposed 4 to 5 stops and the IAF still worked perfectly. There is no other camera on the market that can do that.
Usually when I'm filming, especially things like a music video, I'm always shooting people, and I just want my focus to stay locked in on my characters. So that's one problem that I didn't have to think about as I was using the camera, because it's literally even uncanny how the camera actually follows the person's eye, which is a feature that I used a lot, literally in every single scene that I was filming. And yeah, it's so good to use a camera where you don't really have to think about focus. Focus is like an afterthought. So I think it's gonna actually make me quite lazy for my other projects where I need to actually work with like a focus puller.
We also tested it with the model walking away from the camera and then back towards it. As soon as she turns around, the camera recognizes her eyes and locks focus.
I can't imagine shooting stuff like this on a different camera that can handle the focus as well as the A7S III.
In the second illustration, you can see as soon as the camera had the slightest awareness of the drummer's face, even with the cymbals in the foreground, it would lock the focus on his face and keep it. It's incredibly fast.
The touch tracking, which basically lets you touch any subject in your frame, and no matter where you move the camera or the frame around, it maintains tack-sharp focus on the object. And it's basically revolutionary.
You simply select the object on the touchscreen and the camera will lock focus and track the object. Here we lock the focus on the model's ring. And as you can see, despite it being relatively small, the camera keeps focus while the hand moves up and down.
On the theme of being able to run and gun with minimal setups, we did quite a few shots that were in actively dark spaces, such as the shot with our character on the street, or even interior shots that would require quite laborious lighting setups if you were going to do them on a traditional camera. The low-light performance of this camera allowed us to, again, employ that run and gun setup, moving between spaces without having to set up lights when we entered those spaces.
It's crazy how far I can push this camera. I think I did some scenes where I shot at an ISO of like 12,000, and it's very not natural for a cinematographer to shoot anything above like 3,200. And the fact that this camera and the low light capability is so incredible that you can push it to that far. It just worked so beautifully for me on my set. Another feature that people like myself, cinematographers, use is obviously the monitor. Like, a monitor is very big part of what you do as a cinematographer. And the fact that the camera has a variable screen that I can put in any position that I want when I'm filming. Because most of the time, especially when I'm doing gimbal work, the camera is not always right in front of my face. It's either gonna be high up or it's gonna be very low.
And it's not just for recording yourself, it's super useful in so many scenarios. Sometimes you can't get behind a camera to see the scene, and just to be able to turn the screen wherever you want to see is it's just a game changer.
The screen is so bright that you can even use it during the day and you can still see what you film. You can even check on your focus and see clearly on the screen all the information that you need.
This is one of the things I had hoped for the most, and Sony did not disappoint. Adopting the color science from the Venice system and higher-end cinema cameras like the FX9, you're now getting more natural skin tones straight out of camera. These are examples of simply adding the Rec 709 lights to the S-Log footage. Good out-of-camera skin tone makes the grading process easier because you're not pushing the codecs trying to focus on skin tones. With previous alpha models, you had to work a little harder to achieve the same color. But now, with a higher bit depth, having a better color to start with gives you more freedom to alter it according to your taste. The A7S III is truly in a class of its own. A lightweight mirrorless camera throwing punches in a heavyweight class. There's no doubt that this camera will take my business to the next level.
I'm actually a little surprised at how little Sony has held back on this camera because it is incredible. It's the first time I've seen from a camera company where they've listened to their customers so well, and they've actually basically fixed every complaint that we've had in the past.
There's a lot to be said about the A7S III, and I wish I had more time to elaborate.
The Sony A7S III, I think right now it is pretty much the best camera I've used in terms of those small features that I just told you about. Hi guys, today we're using the A7S III camera, the low light beast, the gangster of the camera world. So today's set, we just have two dancers that are actually doing a dance routine in this room. We lit it very nicely. Well, we have 4 lights, RGB lights set up on the windows just to lift the room and then give us like a nice mood. So it's a perfect place to test out the low light capabilities of this camera as well as the autofocus. So yeah, I did a couple shots to test and it was incredible how it was tracking their faces. Like all my shots kept in focus almost throughout the whole thing, even though they're moving quite fast. I have a little bit of a faster shutter so that I can stay up with them. But yeah, the camera's doing amazing. All right. For this next setup, we just set up like a bigger light on the outside, like an HMI, so that we have a strong source of light which mimics what the sun would give you. And then here we just wanted to test out the dynamic range. So literally I have nothing on this side of their faces to like lift them up. I just wanted to see how the camera handles when it has a very strong highlight as well as very shadowy areas. I just want to see if any of the shots come out noisy, and from what I'm seeing right now over here, I don't see any much noise. And the crazy part is that the eye autofocus still works on both of them, so it's still following them as they do their dance routine. I'm coming in closer, following hands, catching those beautiful highlights, as well as the shadows that I'm getting from them. And camera is still managing to capture everything. I love how I do have highlights in my shot, but they're not blown out. They're so smooth. They look pretty much buttery, and I can still feel that in my shadow areas, I still have a lot of information. Like the dynamic range on this camera, the 15 stops helps a lot, especially in scenes like this. The fact that you can be able to get this much data out of all the highlights as well as your shadows, and you still have information, like beautiful information. It's just incredible. All right, so since we set up our lights to be quite warm, my camera was actually at like 3200 white balance. So pop onto the menu, just using the touch itself, you can just go through all the settings. We want this to warm up a bit, so we'll set it at 5600. And then as soon as we do that, you can see our yellow really pops quite nicely with the setting of the room. So yeah, let's try out the touch to focus. So here we have a speaker in her hand, and then I just touch on the speaker, and then as she moves it around, the focus follows the speaker. So even if I move the camera, it'll just stay. Yeah, so it finds whatever highlight that it can see from whatever it is that you're tracking. So it stays, the focus stays focused on whatever object. So if you want to track a speaker, if you want to track maybe a human, if you want to track a dog or whatever, the thing is it has all the settings on the camera. So right now I'll set it to Melita. Oh snap, I'm on a wide and it can still see her. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Camera's rolling and action. Cut. Beautiful, beautiful. Guys, well done. Come on, give us some of this. Well done, guys. That was amazing. Yo, these guys are incredible. Thank you, guys. Just like that, it's a wrap for this scene. Okay, well done, Melita. Well done, Angelo. That was dope. Yeah, cool. And well done, the Sony A7S III. What a beast.
Hi everybody, today I'm shooting with the Sony A7S III, and we've got Jason here. He's going to help us today with this drumming scene. We've got a nice setup here, and I want to showcase 3 aspects of this camera that I really like and enjoy working with. So the first thing that I really want to showcase is the IBIS, and especially the active mode. And I just want to see, while walking with the camera, if I can get steady shots. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to shoot in the active mode, and we've got a very nice lens here. It's the 12-24 2.8, which is also new from Sony. Okay, so Jason, what I want you to do is you can keep the headphones in front of you. That's fine. So I'm going to walk towards you, and all I want you to do is just put it on. Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. Okay, put it on. So just looking on the screen, I really feel this shot is very stable. So normally when I walk with previous models, when I walked just handheld, I felt that the shot was a bit unstable. With the active mode, it almost feels like a gimbal for me, and that is really something new, and I think something that we're going to use a lot, especially shooting handheld. So the Sony S series is known to be the king of low light, and with this camera, it's even one stop better. It adds an extra stop of low light sensitivity. Adding to this, the new real-time eye autofocus for video is amazing for normal circumstances. So what makes this camera superior is the fact that you can have that autofocus in low light situations. And there's no other camera on the market that can do that. Okay, so Jason, for the next shot, I just want you to move into the light and just go back. I just want to see how the autofocus keeps up. Okay, go back. You can go in your own tempo. Okay, and great. Yeah, this is really amazing. So as you can see, when it goes back into the darker parts, the real-time eye autofocus is spot on. And obviously when it comes back into the light, it keeps the focus. So in low light situations, it really works great. Awesome. So the last feature that I want to talk about is a nice added bonus, in my opinion. It's shooting HD in 200 frames per second. And for this setup, it's actually great because when you hit the cymbals, that effect just shooting it in this type of super slow-mo, just create something creative that you can use in post. So most of what I shot is in 4K. But if you shoot in HD, especially on a shallow depth of field, you can actually match that in post by upscaling the HD. And if you only use it in 1 or 2 shots, then your viewer won't notice it. So for extra effect, we just place some water on the cymbal, and then let's see the effect of the 200 frames per second. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, and go. So thanks everyone. This was a couple of features that I really love about this camera. And as you will see from the other ambassadors, there's a lot of features that's really great in this camera.
What's up everyone? So for my portion of this demonstration, we're doing a styled food shoot. We've got our chef Dash over here. She's also a food stylist, so she's prepared like a lot of delicious goodies for us, set it up in a really nice way, similar to a food ad or a food promotional shoot that you would do. We have some lights going, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate one of my favorite new features of the A7S Mark III, and that is the high frame rates in 4K. I'm specifically talking about 100 frames. So for that reason, I'm going to do this entire shoot in 100 frames. I might go to 200 frames, but in HD, but for most of the stuff, I'm going to shoot in 100 frames just to illustrate that quality. You're getting the exact same quality, and what makes this camera superior is that apart from getting that high frame rate, you actually retain full functionality of your autofocus. I'm going to shoot most of the shots in manual focus, but there are many situations where you need to have autofocus if you want to rely on it. And when you're shooting in 100 frames in 4K, this camera will do the job. I'm also going to do the entire shoot with my hands, just handheld. There's going to be lots of movements. That is also just to illustrate the IBIS, which have been in Sony cameras since forever. But I love being able to work fast and efficient, to frame up that shot quickly. Handheld is the way to go. And because I'm shooting in high frame rates, it's just gonna look awesome. Let's see what we can create. So starting out, we are shooting the establishing scene where she's gonna put on the apron. And I wanna do that quite close, but I wanna use the 35. And to get to the right angle, this counter is actually in the way. So if I wanted to shoot handheld, I would have to hold it like this, and that's quite awkward. So what I like to do is, one of my favorite ways of shooting handheld is using the EVF, because this is the highest resolution EVF in the world. So it feels like I've got like a 4K monitor inside by just putting it to my eyes. So what happens is when I put it over here, I'm gonna lean closer because this is more or less where I want my frame. I can actually see so well. I can see the focus, the colors. It's beautiful. Another feature I'm also excited about is the reduced rolling shutter. Due to the faster sensor readout, you basically eliminate rolling shutter, especially in 4K and high frame rates. A lot of cameras really struggle with that because this is a full frame camera and getting that full 4K full frame. Rolling shutter is an issue on a lot of cameras, but not on this one. So in this type of shoot where I'm doing a lot of fast movements, tracking movements, whips and pans, on most cameras it'll be an issue, but with the A7S III they've actually improved it. The sensor is much faster. I'm not saying this is a global shutter, but your eye won't see the difference. And then finally, one of my personal favorite new features of this camera is the new color science. Now I'm saying when I first got this camera, the moment I picked it up and switched it on, I saw something was different. More than dynamic range, I could see there's a difference in the color rendition, especially when it comes to skin tones. So inheriting the color from Venice and FX9 systems, I think it's amazing that Sony was able to pack in all of those features in a small, compact body like this. It might not be a cinema camera, but it's got all of the capabilities on the inside.
Now, a one-take shot is not necessarily something you would attempt as a team of two. Normally, when you're in this environment, especially with this many moving parts, you've got cast, you've got a motorcycle, you've got a location that you're trying to shoot, and different lighting elements. But we're able to try it partly because of one special feature, the fine ability of control you have on autofocus on this camera. Luke is able to go from an outdoor space to an indoor space to an outdoor space again because he can confidently and accurately control how fast the camera autofocuses and just when it chooses to move from one subject to another. Now that enables me to focus on directing and performance and him to focus on getting the camera in the right place and moving it freely as a single operator.
We've had so many different shooting environments and locations on this shoot that it's super important to be able to change your settings as quickly and efficiently as possible. We've flown the camera on a drone, we've flown it on a gimbal, we've done handheld shots, and all of that is made so much easier by the new menu system on the A7S III. It's fully redesigned, it's touchscreen, and everything is well thought out and placed, and it just makes shooting so much easier.
Jambo, I am Cedric Nzaka. I'm a commercial fashion and portrait photographer.
I am Anthony Bila. I'm a fine art and fashion photographer.
I'm Ian Nieuwenhuizen. I shoot weddings and commercial.
And I am a
Sony Alpha
ambassador. The A7C has been a revelation to me. Having recently played with it in the inner city of Johannesburg, from shooting fine art to shooting fashion to shooting street photography, it's been exciting, and I don't think there's anything quite like it on the market.
We had a chance to test it out recently and we decided on a location that had the capacity for high contrast scenes like natural light spilling through the windows. We decided to use a dancer just to bring in that unpredictable element of movement that you often find throughout the wedding day, especially in the reception when the party started and everyone is dancing.
So the 7C really benefits me in the way that I shoot based on 3 fundamentals that I always look out for. Full frame quality, which it scores really high marks in.
You have all the plus points of the full frame and the lightweight and compact body of the A6500 combined into one camera.
And the ergonomics of this being a full frame camera, being as light and small as it is, just made me the invisible man, essentially. This was exciting. It meant that I could get really close to my subjects and really intimate with them and not be noticed and still have the power of full frame on my side.
The A7C body actually weighs just under 15 grams more than the A6500 body. And as a bonus, you have the stamina and the battery life of the A7 III.
One of the most exciting features for me on the A7C was the IBIS. In terms of photography, there were certain scenarios in some of the shoots that were really low light situations where I had to open up the shutter for a little bit longer, and the IBIS performed like a champion. It made the work come out a lot smoother, which means less shots, which means quicker turnarounds. It was just an incredible experience working and shooting night scenes and shooting day scenes, shooting interiors and shooting low light situations, and not having to worry about camera shake and what it's going to look like coming out of that camera.
We did a test between 3 models, the A7 III, A6500 and the A7C, and set them up to record 30 minutes uninterrupted. At the end, we compared the battery life of the 3 models. The A7 III was on 85%, the A6500 was on 69%, the A7C was on 88%. It might sound like a small difference, but this is going to count for you in wedding settings where ceremonies and speeches can run for extended amounts of time.
The APS Type C for me has been something that I have used in the past when shooting on film. So to have that translated to the convenience and speed of digital is something that I could have only hoped for and realized in the brilliance of what the 7C is. It means having to shoot full frame, that 35mm feel and look, the 3:2 proportions and ratio in a very, very small, simple, powerful body. Phase detection for me when it comes to speed on the 7C is something that's also indispensable, if I could put it that way. The 693 points makes it really dynamic when I'm shooting and moving around to access specific portions of my frame and to focus in on those and get the camera to focus in on the things that I want to. You know, the real-time tracking, the autofocus on faces just makes it a wonder when I'm working in the streets or whether I'm working in a studio.
This is great for speeches, ceremonies, and for important moments like the bride walking down the aisle. When we tested it out, we found that the eye tracking was spot on in most conditions. It's going to give you that extra confidence in once-in-a-lifetime moments. We did some quick tests, and as you can see, it has no problem tracking the eye. I'm really happy about this being added, and I can already see how the A7C will be a go-to camera for wedding videographers, vloggers, churches, for live streaming and corporate interviews.
Image quality for me is paramount when I'm shooting because I want the sharpest images, the crispest images that I can get out of the camera that I'm using. And the 7C for me performs remarkably well in that scenario. Because of that 35mm full frame, it makes it something that can access image quality to the best of its ability and perform in a way that I just enjoy every single time that the shutter goes off.
Just to wrap up, I think the A7C will become a go-to camera for a lot of videographers, especially as a high-quality second cam, supporting something like the A7S III. I've been working with the A7 III for the past couple of years, and I really love working with them. It has been our main camera in our company, and we used it for everything from weddings to TVCs. The small things that I wish could be changed on the A7 III has been changed and implemented in the A7C. This makes the A7C my favorite budget full-frame camera, And even if it's not your B camera, but your only camera, you'll be able to create beautiful videos and photos. I can't wait to put this awesome little camera in my bag.
I'm really excited to test this camera out again when the world opens up in different kinds of city that I've shot street photography in, from New York to Johannesburg to Nairobi and even maybe Barcelona.
I have such a small, compact body with me right now. What's even more insane and mind-blowing is the fact that I literally get full frame capability from such a small, compact body. You can see I'm even shooting on a 50mm, which is my go-to lens when shooting everyday people. And you know, for instance, with me, I capture strangers so often, and the lightweightness for me makes it very convenient for me because I walk around with my camera, let's say, for a Saturday day at Neighborhoods. I'll have my camera throughout from, let's say, 10 a.m. when Neighborhoods opens to 3 p.m. And the lightweightness with the 50mm for me is perfect. One of the coolest things I've actually noticed right now while shooting my subject right now is how quickly I can transition from single focus to continuous focus by press holding the back button. So my model moves quite quick and I don't want to miss anything in the action shot. So by press holding the back button, I go quickly from single shooting to continuous shooting. And what I like about it is that, you ready for me? I can single shoot effortlessly. But the moment I press hold the back button, the more he moves, I miss nothing from the action shots and keep going. Let's go, bro. And it's perfect for me because my model keeps going, and with press holding the back button, I am missing nothing. No matter how quick they move, no matter the pose that I actually like, I can still capture everything effortlessly with no worry of missing a single shot. What I like most about Sony cameras is how quickly I can go into APS-C mode. So pretty much with the click of a button, as you can see, I can practically turn my 50mm into an 85. Let go, and I'm back to 50mm. Click of a button, and my 50mm practically turn into an 85, and I can just snap away. So for this part of the shoot, I'll be using pretty much the flip screen, and I'll be focusing on the touch element on the flip screen, which pretty much allows me to capture my subject with better composition and also pretty much, thank you, I like that, keep that. With cohesion with the eye out of focus, I can pretty much just bring out everything and I can maintain my position, and as the model moves, thank you, lovely. That's perfect. So for this part of the shoot for me, I'm in love with the flip screen on the Sony A7C because it gives me ease of access when it comes to pretty much capturing my model. My model is actually perfect because she moves a lot. I pretty much just capture her effortlessly, and the flip component just allows me to view her in a perfect fit and just, yeah, shoot it from there.
The Sony A7C has some really stylish design. I mean, just look at it. It's really easy to handle in the hand. I have a 1.8 FE 35mm on it, and it's almost invisible. It's stealthy. What I really like is it's got a fashionable sense to it, even for us photographers who are normally behind the scenes. So you look cool while you do some cool work. The Sony A7C is also a creative solution for composition. With 693 high-speed autofocus points, I can focus in on my composition and realign it to anything that I want because I know edge to edge, I'm gonna get the sharpness I'm looking for. Being one of the smallest and lightest full-frame cameras, the Sony A7C is truly remarkable for its ergonomic design and its lightweight, easy-to-use features. For me, what's really stand out is the fact that you get full frame quality in such a small, slim, easy to travel with and work with body, whether you're in the streets or studio photography. The A7 III has always been a remarkable camera with remarkable image quality. I'm really excited that somehow they've managed to improve it to be even better than it was, which is no small feat. With the 7C, the images are that much sharper and just a pleasure to work with. The real-time eye autofocus is an amazing feature on the A7C because whether my model is moving around and giving me dynamic movement for incredible shots or just moving through the street for photography, it makes it apparent that this camera does not lose focus and does not lose track of the subject. It's also great when I'm doing video and shooting myself or other subjects because that focus just tracks and moves exactly the way that I want it to.
Okay, so for my demo, I'm shooting a small little fashion film. We're trying some weird stuff, so hopefully it comes out great. But I quickly want to talk about the new feature in the A7C, namely the continuous IAF for video. So what we're doing is we've got a couple of models here. We've got some weird lighting setups where there's a lot of contrast, a lot of low light situations, and we're also using props to cover their faces. And what I'm trying to see is if we cover the face and remove the covering, how fast does the IAF pick up? Also in low light situations, does it keep the focus? So I'm going to try a couple of things and let's see what the results are. So I tried a couple of interesting shots and I must say this is a great new feature in the A7C. I played around covering the face of the model, and the moment the camera sees the eye, it picks it up and then the focus locks onto the eye. This is going to be great even for things like that's not that dramatic, like speeches and ceremonies. I think this is going to be a brilliant B cam supporting something like the A7S III. The A7C is the smallest full frame body in the market at this moment. But what's really great, it also comes out with the Z batteries, and we've tested the batteries extensively now, and even in this shoot, I never ran out of battery life. It's actually better than something like the A7 III as well. So that's a great addition, and again, that will make this camera a perfect B camera for your setup. So just two small things that I also like about this camera is one, the card slot changed to the left side, and that's great if you're shooting with a gimbal. So if you're running out of space, you open it up and it's not in the way of the gimbal. So that's actually a small little feature. And then obviously the new flippy screen, it's also great. And again, especially if you're working with a gimbal, trying to get some high shots or lower shots, the flip screen works brilliant for that. So today we were actually under a bit of pressure. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of scenes that we're trying to create. And one thing that I love about Sony cameras is the IBIS. We don't always have time to use a gimbal and get different shots, and especially the way I shoot, I like to move quickly and go to different setups as soon as possible, as fast as possible. And using the A7C, I must say the IBIS is really, really good. I did a couple of shots with different lenses, and I didn't feel that the camera is unstable. I could do the things that I wanted to do. That's a great feature in this camera, and I'm looking forward to working with it in post to see how stable it is and how much post stabilization I need. But let's take a couple of shots and I'm going to test the IBIS, moving forward and backwards with a wide lens, and then you can decide for yourself if it's stable enough. And so for this shoot, I've used the 20mm, the 35mm, and the 50mm. So the new 20mm 1.8G is really a great little lens. I shot with it for a while and it's brilliant. It's very stable, and the 1.8 on the wider focal length is really a plus point. So coming from the A7 III, I always felt that the autofocus was really decent, but when I started working with the A7C, I can really see there's actually improvement on the autofocus. So that's a great addition in this camera. Overall improvement of autofocus.
Alpha.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Q&A. I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded with wonderful talent this evening, and as you can see we're all practicing social distancing, but we're going to fire with a whole bunch of questions that are coming through online, and the first one goes to Ofense. How does it feel to be able to use the A7S3?
Thanks, Grant. I feel quite blessed. I just remembered I was having a conversation with my wife, I think 2 days ago or a day ago. And yeah, Joe, I just feel blessed to be able to be in this position right now. Because I remember my oldest brother, gave me my first camera. And that camera was a Sony. I think it was a A something from back then. Yeah, I remember it was really terrible. It had probably 32 megabytes of storage. So it was a long time ago. And funny enough, he was a big fan of Sony. And then he bought another camera, a PD170. That was in 2001, I believe. And then yeah, he gave me that camera. And that camera is literally the camera that started my whole career. Because I remember I shot my first video at church. And then that pastor called me to come and shoot at his church, and I started shooting videos. That's when it all started for me. So I've been in the Sony family for a very, very long time. And I just feel so blessed to be using the A7S III. Yeah, brilliant camera.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
Hey Anthony, I've got a question here from a street photographer who's wondering if the A7C will impress them.
I mean, completely. For me, the ergonomical design of the A7C and how compact and light it is. In fact, it's 22% lighter than the A7 III, with the body having the camera, card and battery, which means it's incredibly ergonomic and light to use. It makes me work through scenes in a very incandescent and kind of surreptitious way. I feel almost like this malevolent force capturing the city when I use it. So they're going to have fun with it if they're going to be doing any kind of street photography or even street style photography. It's just perfect for that kind of work.
Fantastic. Cedric, got a question here regarding the flip out screen on the A7C, and the comment says that they're happy to see this feature finally on a Sony, and how do you find the functionality?
For me, the flip out screen, being able to pretty much turn vertically and horizontally with the help of intuitive touch and the perfect real-time eye autofocus is ideally convenient for me when it comes to capturing a lot of fashion and people photography. For example, I do a lot of magazine page spreads, and what happens realistically is the flip out screen will pretty much be convenient for me when it comes to allowing perfect image composition. The touch aspect allows me to make sure all my subjects are in focus, and the real-time eye autofocus for me allows me to get sharp, candid images and not miss any shots. So it's perfect for me.
Fantastic. Ian, how's it? I've got a question here. Who would you recommend the A7C to?
Yeah, so I've been working on the A7 III for the last 2 years, and that was really my go-to camera. We've done a lot of work, weddings, commercial work as well. And after working with the A7C, I must say it's really comparing and in a lot of settings, it's even better than the A7 III. So I would say for wedding videographers, especially if you want to use it as a second cam, if you're in the market for a new A7S III as well, I think the A7C will be a brilliant second cam. And if it's your only cam, like I said before, you'll obviously also get amazing footage, video-wise and photo. So I think, especially for wedding guys, it's a great camera.
Brilliant, brilliant. Luke, next one for you. In terms of overheating, it is an issue with sensors. And should we worry about it on the A7S III?
So for me, overheating is something that you really can't overlook. And when the specs came out for the A7S III, I was actually very skeptical and nervous that there were going to be overheating issues because it doesn't have any active cooling like a fan. But we tried it out shooting for hours in very hot conditions and it never stopped, which made me feel much, much better about it. And to be honest, if your camera can shoot 4K 100 in 10-bit 422 with AF tracking, none of that really means anything if the camera is going to overheat and stop working. So from our testing, I don't think anybody has had overheating issues, so that's really nice to see.
Brilliant. Let's go to the next question here. Sorry, just Jacques. Your video is, sorry, I'm just reading here. Your video in the mountains was amazing. How, may I ask where the setup was?
Yes, Grant, so what makes my film, the exciting part about the A7S III is I always wanted to achieve that high-level cinema look, but where I like to shoot is usually in remote places. It requires hiking, a lot of effort, and you need your backpack. Sometimes you need to camp. I do like to shoot a lot of hiking stuff. And the A7S III finally it realizes that potential for me to have that high-end cinema look in a small body that I could just chuck in my bag. I didn't use any rigs. I used the gimbal for two or three shots. And also what I found to be really amazing was just not having to use any lights. We actually just used one reflector, the small 5-in-1 reflector, to diffuse some of the harsh sunlight and also to bounce some light onto our models. But I just love being able to just take the body and a minimal setup and actually get amazing results. Like, I'm so happy with what we were able to achieve, and I was really sad when I had to give the camera back. So I can't wait until it's like public and we can all just start shooting on it.
Fantastic. Tony, what is the Venice color? What does it actually mean to somebody to have that doesn't have a cinema background?
So Venice color science, essentially it's what you have on Sony's cinema class line. And for me personally, we were interacting with a point in our career where up until now we've developed and shaped the way we shoot exclusively around these small mirrorless bodies. But the projects we were being asked to shoot, especially leveraging off being in South Africa or sending a small team of 2 people to a remote location like Luke went to Antarctica, it started hitting this point where we needed to be able to produce that cinema color, right? We needed to be able to produce that cinema look. And I was starting to develop this small anxiety of like, do we now need to buy like a cinema camera, right? Do I now need to lug that up the mountain like Jacques said, right? Or do I need to then put that in my backpack when I'm traveling just myself? And for me personally, what that Venice color science means is that no matter the scale of the project, no matter what our footage needs to be cut into and part of at the end of the day, it means that we can have a camera the size of what we've always used and really just take that jump in quality and adapt to having that cinema color science in the palm of our hands. So for me, Venice color science means my life doesn't change that much. I still get to do incredible things in a probably sillily small team, and I also get to create amazing content with cinema class color science with something I can hold in my hands by myself.
Brilliant, brilliant. Anthony, next question is around the autofocus on the A7C and how it compares to previous models.
I mean, I think it's a marked jump. I would even venture to say it's a quantum leap. Composition for me is a really important aspect of the photography that I do. So with the 693 phase detection points, it means that I can kind of look at a scene, frame it, lock in on the scene that I want, and then recompose it or reframe it without worrying about edge-to-edge sharpness, because it's going to come out crystal clear and as sharp as a diamond, really. So that's an important aspect. And even just the ergonomics of this body being made of a magnesium alloy, and the kind of the monocoque structure that they use in cars and aircrafts being used in this body means that it's going to be durable, it's going to be resistant to moisture and dust, and still capture the kind of cinema grade quality that Hloni was talking about. But even on a photography aspect, it's going to capture incredible color science.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ofense, in terms of the focusing, how have you found the S3's focusing capabilities, and have you tested the limits?
Yeah, I think I definitely did. I remember there's a bunch of scenes that I shot that were very low light, and you can see the tracking actually still staying with the person as they're doing the action. So yeah, as coming from a cinematographic background, I shoot a lot of movies, I shoot a lot of music videos and commercials. All those sets, when I go to them, I require to have a special camera assistant, which is my focus puller. So, and at that time we're lugging a lot of gear when we're doing all that. So with this camera, the advantage that you're getting is that the autofocus on the camera is just so incredible that it snaps onto whatever person that you're shooting. So the fact that you won't be on a set and you have a person with you there who's breathing down you, trying to get all the shots that you want, is gonna be eased out. And the fact that you just concentrate on your framing, you frame it right, and then your subject will stay in focus. That's all we want really from a camera, and this camera does it very well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Luke, have you managed to get your hands on the 12-24? Can you give us any feedback on how amazing it is?
Yeah, that's a lens that when it came out, I knew I wanted to try out, and it doesn't disappoint. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're shooting a whole, everything you've shot before could be looked at differently. Just to be able to go to 12 millimeters, still at f2.8, and maintain the G master level of sharpness is something that you haven't been able to do before. This is actually the only 12-24 2.8 lens in the world, and yeah, I love it. Autofocus on a lens like this isn't really what you think of when you think of an ultra wide, but it's incredible autofocus speed as well, and yeah, I couldn't find any complaints with it, to be honest.
Brilliant, brilliant. Ian, I'm a wedding photographer and I'm currently shooting on an A6600. Is it worth investing in an S3?
A videographer? Yeah, probably. Yes, definitely. So I've been shooting weddings for the last 11 years, and I think if I can quickly go through my journey, I started out and for just something like stabilization, the first thing that I saw was moving shots that was stable, and I always thought, how did I do it? And then I found out it's like a glide cam, and I used a glide cam, and then when the S2 came out, the Sony A7S II with the IBIS, that changed my whole way of shooting, and we got really great results with that camera as well. But I think the S3 is the next level on so many levels. I think if you want better image quality, better dynamic range, this is the camera for you. Just thinking of scenes with the bride, you want beautiful skin tones, so definitely. And then for me, the IBIS, the active mode, is brilliant. So there were shoots in the past, even in the past week or two, that I really was handling a gimbal, and at stages it was just too rough, and I take it off and I shoot handheld. But with the S3, I will be able to take that off and get really, really decent shots. So I think for a wedding guy, you can't go wrong.
Fantastic. Afense, question around the batteries on the S3 versus the R4. How have you experienced it? Has it improved?
Yeah, the battery definitely has improved because when we're on set most of the time, your camera stays running. Like it can be a wedding or maybe you're shooting a commercial, you're shooting a music video. Most of the time, the director always wants to see what's on your camera or what your camera see. So camera will stay on the whole time so that everyone has picture and they're always clear about what's going on. So the fact that this camera, you can pop it onto this, the battery, I mean, you can pop it onto the camera and it stays working is incredible. So there's one shot that I did, there's one scene. I was finishing off the music video that we were shooting, and the camera, the battery started blinking that the battery is literally empty. I think after that moment, I still shot for probably about 30 minutes still, even though the battery was like completely out. So I was scared I wasn't gonna get my shots, but I still managed to get the shots just because the battery was so powerful. So yeah, I'm super happy that it got an upgrade and it's a bigger battery that can last longer on the camera. I'm sure on stills, it'll probably last the whole day. So yeah, it was a really, really good upgrade when it comes to the battery. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Jacques, someone's asking the benefits of the 7C over the A7 Mark III.
So, Grant, I haven't actually shot with the A7C yet, but I can already see the benefits. It's definitely the size ratio. We're getting into an age where the cameras are getting smaller and better, but from my personal experience from looking at the work that Ian and Anthony did, I feel that the skin tone and the color science is actually one of the benefits. There's definitely an improvement, and it actually looks more similar to the A7S III, the color science, than the previous Alpha models. So I would like to try it out for myself more. I haven't personally shot with the A7C yet, but my main features that I saw standing out above any of the previous Alpha models, the full frame, is just the real-time eye autofocus for video. That's brilliant. The phase detect, and also the new color science. I'm yet to try the ISO and all those, but I think it's on par with the A7 III. I'm really excited about this little camera. I think it's the start of great things to come for this form factor, and especially the color. I think Sony is just growing leaps and bounds with their color.
Fantastic. Ian, I've got a question here asking, do you think that the A7C is considered a second camera for wedding videographers?
Yes, I think it can definitely be a brilliant camera as a second cam. Like I said, as a first cam as well, because we've been shooting on the A7 Mark III for the past 2 years, a lot of weddings, and it worked perfectly. I just think when you level up to the S3 now, your world is going to be blown away. But just to say what Jacques also said now, in the color science and autofocus, it actually it keeps up in a sense with the S3, so you will be able to match it in post. So I think the combination of those two will be perfect.
Fantastic. Clone, I've got a question here about 120 frames a second in terms of its functionality and when you would need it. What is your thoughts around it? Is it just for specific shots?
I think we touched on this a little bit in our demo video. For us, we shoot story-driven stuff, right? So a lot of people, they feel as if 120 frames, high frame video is mainly focused for moments of action. But for us, there's a huge technical boon to it, right? You're able to shoot in 4K, so you're able to move your frame around, but you saw we did those match shots, right? So we're not exact about that. We're shooting run and gun. We have 4K, which means we can reframe after the fact. And we have a cast member who's not particularly good at communication, right? When you have a dog, you can't tell them to walk at a specific speed. So having that variable frame rate meant that we could change the speed that Ollie moved in from shot to shot, right? And that's the perfect combination. Also, there's various scenarios where you have that lack of control, right? So I know that Luke is particularly excited to take these on wildlife excursions where you're shooting 120 frames a second. You have a specific animal behavior that really, it's a single moment, right? And when you put it in your edit, if you're only shooting at 25, it doesn't give the gravitas of that moment. But if you're able to shoot it in both 4K and then slow it down by a factor of 4, you're able to turn a single head turn of a penguin or a single flip of a whale's tail into like this meaningful and structural character moment in your piece. So I really love playing with those two elements.
Fantastic. Cedric, in terms of the functionality of the A7C in a studio environment, traditionally larger, chunkier cameras are utilized. How do you see the 7C utilized in that kind of environment?
For me, when it comes to the 7C, most times I transition from shooting fashion photography to, let's say, corporate profiles. And what happens in like studio setups when you're shooting corporate profiles, you either shooting up to 50 people a day. In a studio setup, the lightweightness of the A7C allows you to ease when it comes to how efficient you are, because you're not tired. You can double up from a 50mm to a 70-200, but the lightweightness of the A7C pretty much gives you ease of carrying on throughout studio setup photography. You have a 12-hour shoot, and the A7C for me is perfect for those kind of setups, because at the end of the day, I'm still ready to shoot more because it's extremely light. So it's perfect for me in those kind of setups.
Fantastic. Jacques, I've got a question here, and it's raising, why would somebody upgrade to the S3?
Grant, that is the most important question I think anyone can ask, because we need to understand how much better the S3 is compared to any of the previous Alpha models. I'm not bashing the previous models. What I'm saying is they went the high-end cinema level, and they brought it down to us. And they put in all those features. So it's not an incremental improvement, it's leaps and bounds. It's really, truly a next level camera. I think there's no camera like it. I can point out a few reasons why. There's actually a whole list that if you start pointing it out, you can see that this is the only camera in the world that can do these things. So for example, one of the things that really stood out for me is the ability to get amazing low light in log mode, which a lot of cameras, most DOPs won't go over 3200 ISO, where I actually tested it on 16,000 ISO, where it almost emulates a dual native ISO. You're getting the full 15 stops of dynamic range, and the noise just drops down to almost zero, depending on your lighting conditions. But I tried it in various situations, and it was incredible. So features like that, the ability to keep your autofocus in all your frame rates, 120 frame rates, 4K, fully functional, the reduced rolling shutter, and then that high 10-bit codec that you can really push way beyond. I mean, 8-bit and 10-bit is not like saying it's just a few percentage or 4 times better. It's millions of colors to billions of colors. So it's leaps and bounds. And I think the moment you have it in your hands, the moment you open the footage up in post, you're going to realize that. And I know that after, when I got the camera, I was ruined. I told everyone, I was like, I don't know how I'm going back to anything less.
Fantastic, fantastic. We've got space for one more question. And Anthony, it's just around the viewfinder of the A7C and how you experience the viewfinder, comparing it to the likes of previous models.
I mean, it was incredible because, I mean, I normally, when I'm shooting, I wear glasses, and that kind of narrow field of view has limited me before in certain instances. But with this viewfinder, it's bright, it's intuitive, and the color science of it, again, is so dynamic that when I'm working through it, I get to see these scenes in kind of the way that they're going to be post-photography, and working with them. So, yeah, for me, it's going to be an incredible godsend, if I can even call it that, because it works in a way that just makes the ease of motion, the ease of capturing, and also just to eliminate the rest of the scene so you can focus in on what's going on in those 4 corners in an incredible way that's really exciting.
Brilliant, brilliant. So there's lots of questions coming through regarding when is available, when we're getting it stock in the country. We're expecting stock end of this month in October. And in terms of pricing, the A7S3, we're estimating around 65,000 Rand at retail, and then the 7C, the body, at about 35,000, and that with a pancake lens 2860, we're looking at about 43,000 estimated at retail. So stocks are in demand, so make sure you get your orders in with your local retailer. And before we wrap up, I'd just like to thank the wonderful team here, guys. You did incredible work. Guys behind the scenes making it happen, thank you for everything, and most of all, a wonderful product which wouldn't this wouldn't all be available if it wasn't for Sony and this spectacular product we have in our midst. So thanks very much, guys.